All right, guys, I would try and dap you over the live stream, but NBA security is telling me that I can't. But at least we're back. Welcome back to Three in the Key, brought to you by FineBet. Me and two of the coolest dudes in sports journalism break down the NBA from matchups to social media shade to fashion. I'm Daniel Tran. Here with me is Sandeep Chandok kicking it in the Bay. And as always, Henry Curry, a.k.a. Henny Curry, coming in from Southern California. Sandeep, how you doing, man? Like, what's going on in your life right now?
Aside from basketball, man, like I said, I cherish my days off, guys. Like time off,
it's always good, bro. It's good for the psyche.
As my boy Marshawn from the Bay says, take care of your mental, and that's what I've been doing over these past couple of days.
That's good.
All right, Henry, what have you been up to, man?
Pretty good, bro. Just working on all these side projects, for other companies and everything, getting other things accumulated. But before I get into myself, or actually not even about myself, I want to give a quick shout out to my boy Dan for going semi-viral on Twitter. I saw this and I was like, I saw that, and I was like, oh my boy, I was like,
300
numbers.
Oh, Jimmy Butler, man, he does the thing. But if I'm going to give credit to anybody, it'd be my boy Kofi, who works over at SB Nation with he's a great content creator. If you can follow him on Twitter, you could. But his followers, man, they just go buck wild whenever he retweets my stuff. So if the credit goes to anybody, it's not my creative genius, it's his promotion. But
hey, it was a good tweet though.
Great tweet.
Hey, all it takes is for one person and the right person to see it, but you put it out there, so we gotta give you the credit first.
All right. Well, I mean, since we're talking about NBA, let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets and the Bucks. Or let's talk about. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's not the Brooklyn Bucks. We were talking about Brooklyn and how it was supposed to be the Bucks game that we were going to be excited about. That was the things that we were looking forward to. But it's actually the Nets and the Cavs that actually delivered for us. I mean, the Cavs were up for a majority of the game. The Nets actually started trying in the fourth quarter and forced overtime. But that's when things really got crazy. I mean, Collin Sexton, this kid, I love this guy. Had the ball stolen from him in the final seconds of regulation that resulted in OT, but that didn't deter the guy. He makes a game-tying shot in OT to force double overtime, scores 15 in double overtime to take the game from Brooklyn, finished the game with 42 points. And I mean, we're talking about the 8th draft pick from the 2018 draft, a draft featuring Luka Doncic, Trae Young as the top dogs. So he's battling with Michael Porter Jr., DeAndre Ayton, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to be the next star of that draft. But when we look back at this game, throughout, when his career is over, is this the game that we point to as the starting point of his all NBA level stardom? Sandeep, what do you think?
Man, it's crazy because I didn't know he had 15 in the double OT period until I saw the notes for this show that you had written up a couple hours ago. I'm like I knew he had 42, but I didn't know he scored 15 in double OT. That's crazy.
He took over, man. Took over.
He did, and that, like you said, this could be that game because he's had good games before this. He's had plenty of 30-point games, but this is, I think, his first time scoring 40, and I think it was his career high too, right, in points. So, and he did it against the Brooklyn Nets the first time their trio played together. People are gonna remember this game. It's kind of like his coming out party. I knew Sexton could score the ball, so the 42 when I saw it, it was a little surprising, but also not, because he's always been able to get to the basket. His mid-range is killer. 3 balls improved. The one knock I've had on him since he entered the league is he's a point guard and he needs to do more of the point guard duties, such as getting other guys involved. His assists have always been kind of low, this could be it, man. He's kind of like you said in that second tier of the draft class, with some of those other guys, SGA, DeAndre Ayton, to kind of make the next leap. So, and the way Cleveland's playing right now, I mean, they're one of, we talked about this last week, they're one of the best defensive teams in the league. They got some depth now. Garland will be back soon. Jarrett Allen in the mix now. He played well the other night, so he's the catalyst of this Cleveland team right now.
Yeah, and we talked about his assist numbers, but right now he's averaging 27 points with a 53-50-77 slash line. I mean, 50% from three is great. He's 6th in the league right now as of yesterday. But you're right. He's only averaging 2.4 rebounds and 3.7 assists this season. So it's pretty low numbers for everything else. But Henry, when you look at this Cleveland team, and if they're building around Collin Sexton, how many more years do you think it would take for them to actually be competitive, like for the Eastern Conference title?
Honestly, after their last game against the Nets, I don't think too long. I think they're probably a year or two away for being real contenders in the East, especially because I love what you brought up in the beginning. Like, are we going to look back at this and like be like, oh, is this Collin Sexton's coming out game? Because it kind of reminded me of when Steph Curry dropped 50 plus against the Knicks back in like 2013. That was the first time Steph Curry was like on the map. We all knew who Collin Sexton was. We all know he's the young bull, that played 3-on-5 in that Alabama game, which was crazy.
Legendary.
Which was legendary.
Oh my God,
it was insane. So it's like, when is that Collin Sexton gonna come out in the league? Oh my God, it came out against the Nets. It came out against James Harden, Kyrie, and that man, he really showed out against, I know this league is ran by super teams and superstar duos and stuff like that, but don't count out, the teams that are building through the draft. I'm gonna give credit to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Maybe this is their first time around where they're not gonna be irrelevant without LeBron, because LeBron, we all know like he put that city on the map. He put that whole franchise on the map as
that entire state.
That entire state.
Right.
Yeah. So and we all know previously. And then after his departure, the team became super irrelevant again, if not one of the worst teams in the league. So, is this now the first era of Cleveland Cavaliers basketball, besides, the 1980s, Ron Price and all that stuff, currently now, that make themselves relevant and contenders in the league? I can see it happening. If not this year, then I can see it happening next year, especially with everything getting sorted out with Kevin Porter Jr. and whatnot. But I became, I guess you can say, a little Cavs fan because of,
they're on your radar now.
They're on the radar. They're underrated. That's the best way to put it. But they are definitely on the radar. But for you guys, do you guys think it's going to take a little bit more than 3 years or under that span?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like you never know, especially the way that the Cleveland Cavaliers as an organization have kind of built their team. It's kind of strange because they have this great asset in Collin Sexton. They're supposed to get a lot more for Andre Drummond, but I mean, as long as they have Collin Sexton now, we're talking about a guy that has undeniable competitiveness. Like, we are talking about real Mamba mentality competitiveness.
He's intense.
A lot of people. I mean, dude, when you go down 3 players against 5 in a college game, usually you just shut it down. This guy actually helped the team go back in college. And so we're talking about, now he's a pro. Now he's getting all those skills. And I think that if they can really harness that competitiveness, build that kind of grit and grind that you kind of saw in Memphis, pair them up with some guys that can really just grind you down to the bone, kind of like they are in defense right now. I think this team is maybe, you're right, a year away from actually making some real noise in the Eastern Conference. But I mean, you have him on one hand, and then you have Andre Drummond on the other. The career trajectories are kind of not going opposite directions, but one is definitely higher up than the other right now. So Andre Drummond yesterday in this crazy game against the Nets played fewer minutes than Jarrett Allen. He still got 13 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists, but no blocks. Jarrett Allen got more minutes, 12 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 blocks. So, I mean, from the outside looking for me, this is starting to look like Drummond's exit out of Cleveland. And Sandeep, if you are looking at this situation, where would be the best spot for him to go? I'm hearing Celtics, I'm hearing Raptors, I'm hearing Hornets for maybe potential landing spots. Where do you think is the best place?
Those are 3 good options for sure. I mean, the Celtics do have some centers now with, they have ties. They picked up Tristan Thompson. Their young guy, Robert Williams, has been playing well, when he's been in the lineup. So they got a few guys. It would definitely help them, to have a quality guy like that. But I think it's not worth it for them because he's going to be due for an extension after the season. I don't see them giving him that kind of money. The Raptors just let go of Alex Len. If they want to use Drummond as their starting guy and then bring Chris Boucher off the bench as they had been, who's been balling this season, as a 6-man type, then that would be clutch. Someone said Celtics need all the help they can get. I agree. As a Lakers guy, I agree. No, I'm just playing. Celtics have looked decent, and they got Kemba back now, so I think they'll be fine. But
Hey, as a Celtics fan, I'm just saying we do need all the help we can.
But what assets do you have to bring, though, Henry? Like, let me know.
If we're talking about like a trade package for Andre Drummond, honestly, put Tristan Thompson in there, put Daniel Tice in there, because I think having Andre Drummond as a starter with Robert Williams, backing him up would be perfect.
But, bring more centers to Cleveland.
Yeah.
I feel like they have enough already.
Well, which is true. So it's just like, what can the Celtics give up in order to kind of equate, kind of compromise, all the big men in Cleveland. I'm pretty sure Peyton Pritchard might be in that mix, or I don't even. You know what? Like, I'm gonna need to.
I wouldn't want, if I'm Boston, I'm not giving up Pritchard for.
Oh no, hell no.
For Drummond, who might just end up being a 1-year rental.
Exactly. So
I think centers are more like.
I don't know, with the Boston allure though, man, it'd be tough. I think they could sell him on Boston. I think if you get the culture, the history, and if he's into that kind of thing, I think they can sell him on re-signing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, but then they'd have to move. They have to move Kemba, and then you got to get someone to take Kemba's contract. So another team that I could see, you have the Hornets listed. I think that's a good one because they only got Biyombo and Cody Zeller, who they're not really getting it done. And then I think Dallas could be a team that's looking for maybe some consistent center play, and they need to improve their defense. And so I think Drummond as their anchor could help them, at least if they're trying to make a playoff push this year too, to get out of the first round.
Yeah, and I mean, on the other side of the coin in this game, you had the Cavs who are getting all the praise, which is understandable. But the Nets, they just came off a win against the Bucks, but they dropped the game against the Cavs. Obviously, they weren't trying for a majority of the game, but that's just regular season stuff. But the Big Three still finished with 96 of the team's 135 points. And, I know it's too early to be panicking, but Henry, if there was anything Nets fans should be worried about, like what should they be worried about other than the defense? Because I think that we've talked about that ad nauseum.
Just their Big Three being in scramble mode in clutch time. I think that was pretty prevalent against the Cavs, because we also saw Kyrie's offensive foul. We also saw KD's offensive foul. So, and those are usually things we don't see from our, their clutch players like them. So you can see that they're kind of like, okay, who do we get the ball to? Who's taking the last shot? Who's taking the last drive? Kyrie tried. He had the offensive foul. Collin Sexton, a great defender, sold himself a little bit. Actually, he got hit in the face pretty good. KD, he's not much to get offensive fouls or to even get fouls called on him. So I think the Nets just need to figure out, like, okay, who is going to be our go-to 1, 2, and 3? Like, obviously, it's going to be a hierarchy thing, and it might be an ego type of thing. But who do you guys honestly think is going to take that role to step down of having the ball in their hands, with the final 2 minutes? In my opinion, I think it should be Kyrie, honestly. So I know he's made big shots before, but the way KD and James Harden have been playing together before Kyrie came back, I think they did a splendid job. So what do you guys think?
Well, yeah, for me, like I look at that team and looking at the stats, I think it was James Harden that actually took the step back this last game. He was more of the facilitator throughout this game, and I think that actually that might work out better because you're not going to stop Kyrie from just grabbing the ball and going for it, And then there's Kevin Durant, who is like the unquestionable best player on that team when he's healthy. The thing is, like, you're right. The hierarchy should be KD, Harden, and then Kyrie, because when it comes to making easy baskets or getting easy baskets, you have KD, who is taller than everybody with arms longer than everybody, and then Harden, who is just a load to deal with whenever he's driving or shooting the ball. So, I mean, the way that they set it up yesterday, it made sense, but I think that I kind of agree with you, Henry, where it should be KD, Harden, and then Kyrie. What do you think, Sandeep?
So KD is for sure the number one, but I disagree. I think Kyrie should be like the number 2. But I think the thing we're most importantly we got to think about is that it's going to depend on the flow of the game, right? Like if Harden has it going one game and like he's been killing whoever's been guarding him on the other side all game, like let him take the last shot. If KD's been cooking, then let him get it. Same with Kyrie. So I think it's going to be kind of like a game to game thing. I don't think it's going to be like it's every single game. It's going to be KD. If KD gets the right matchup and he can get like a smaller defender or just a guy who he can, it's just a mismatch and you give it to him. Kyrie's like one of the best at creating space. Like if you guys saw the move in the game yesterday where he took CD Osman off the baseline, hit him with that little shoulder fake, spun back, like he created like a couple feet of separation and hit that mid-range shot, and then we know what Harden likes to hit the little dribble, sidestep or step back. That's like his go-to move. So it's like all those guys are obviously great. KD is like the most unguardable player probably in the league because of what he can do with his size. So, but I think it's just going to come down to like who's hot that game and who has the best one-on-one matchup at the end of it. That's who you got to go to.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's take our site from the East Coast and let's go to the West Coast. Portland Trailblazers, they're about to go into very dangerous territory. I mean, CJ McCollum left the game against Atlanta on January 16th because Clint Capella stepped on his foot attempting to block his shot, and he was diagnosed with a fractured foot and a mid-foot sprain right after the game. And this comes on the heels of Portland losing Yusuf Nurkic the game before, and he got that injury because he swiped at a driving Malcolm Brogdon and fractured his wrist. And so now Portland is 8-6, tied for 5th in the league, and they just lost by 21 points their first game without both stars, with just Damian Lillard leading the way. Who will have to be the one, Sandeep, I want you to answer this one, who will be the one to step up and at least be Alfred to Damian Lillard's Batman? Not even Robin. They just use Alfred. Okay, so who's going to be that player that needs to step up?
See, it's not going to be just one guy, but if I had to pick one, I'll say Melo, just because he's the most consistent scoring option, I think, aside from Dame and CJ. Like he can, obviously get his own shot. He can catch and shoot, and he's been pretty good for them off the bench this year. And I think they're going to continue to bring him off the bench. But he's the most consistent guy. Like guys like obviously Gary Trent and Rodney Hood, who started that first game when McCollum was out. Like he had 21 points in that game. Can he do it consistently though? Gary Trent, like he dropped 26 against the Lakers earlier in the season, but I feel like that's the only team he ever really puts up points against for whatever reason. Like he just loves playing the Lakers. Like we need to see more consistency out of him too. So it's good that they put Hood in the starting lineup just because he's a 6'8", taller guy. He can be disruptive on defense a little bit. He can get his own shot too, just like Gary Trent can, but those guys just have to be consistent. But this is scary hours, man, for Portland. Like they are already struggling defensively. McCollum was having the best season of his career, putting up big time numbers, and now he goes out. This could become a period over this next month if Portland starts losing a lot where they start thinking like, hey, do we need to make a move? And we don't have to get into this too much, but I think I've always wanted them to do this, is try to center a package with using CJ McCollum to acquire Ben Simmons from Philly.
Oh, man. No, man.
Ben Simmons? Why Ben Simmons?
Because look, Dame is a great scorer. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. Portland is terrible defensively. And I love CJ McCollum. I love Dame, and I love them both together because they're a lethal backcourt, but they're an undersized backcourt, and they're a backcourt that can't guard anybody, And with Ben Simmons, it gives you a guy who can, like a run the point forward, great passer, all NBA defender. He would instantly make them better on the defensive side. You can run Dame off screens. Let's say Gary Trent becomes the other starter in place of McCollum. Now you got two shooters right around Ben Simmons, and with Robert Covington as your three, and then you just have a center. Like that team would be nice, And for Philly, it's like, why would we trade Ben Simmons? Well, yes, he's a great defender, good passer, but you still don't have a closer on that team. You could have CJ McCollum run point guard on that team, and you still have Embiid as your defensive anchor. So you throw Nasir Little, who's like a small forward, Anthony Simons, and I tried this trade out on the trade machine, so it works. Like it's all good to go. We just need to make the calls, to make it happen. I think it could be a good deal for like both teams. Philly won't be lacking that much defensively, and then Portland will get much better defensively, and that's the next trade I really like to see happen.
I mean, Portland would get better defensively, but who's going to be that like consistent second scorer?
Yeah, I was going to say
especially with Nurkic out, man. It's like, so Dame, I guess, goes off for 40 a game, and then like that's going to just have to be like, I guess they just have to stop everybody now. So it's just like it's such a shift.
Here's the thing. That's why I say like if you let's say they start Gary Trent, it could be kind of like a if they were to like run an offense kind of like the Warriors did, where they played through Draymond, right? He was kind of like their forward, and you run like him through screen action at the top of the key. You got 2 shooters on the sides, and Dame is obviously like an above 40% 3-point shooter. Gary Trent's kind of like in that 35 to 40 range. So like if you're playing alongside that guy, I think Gary Trent could average like 15 a game. Robert Covington would get even more open shots. They don't need to have another guy scoring like 20, 25 a game. But if they have like a couple guys scoring 15 to 20, along with Simmons, who can give you around 15 a game, like I said, how much better it would make them defensively. I think like you don't need to have like a huge second scorer. Like when the Raptors won that championship a few years ago, right? With Kawhi, like Siakam was averaging like about 20 a game, I think. But Kawhi was the one who was consistently doing it. And they just had their one superstar and then like a lot of really good players around him. And that could be the scenario I think that Portland could create by getting Ben Simmons.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So my question to you, Henry, is for Dame Lillard. We've been talking about how much he needs to like really up his game now, especially with McCollum and Nurkic out.
Yeah.
How many points do you think Lillard needs to average over the next 4 weeks? Because that's when they're going to reevaluate McCollum to keep the Blazers at least competitive.
Damian Lillard is gonna have to go. You know how he can score multiple 60 points a game in a season? Like he's gonna have to do that probably three times more than what he usually does in order to keep this Blazer team afloat. Because in Sandeep's point, CJ McCollum was having a career year. He was averaging 26.7 points a game. He was just going off. He was like instead of being option B, he was option 1A, or option 1B to Lillard's 1A. And that's, Terry Stotts really drives their offense through them. So not having another shot creator, not having Nurkic, I feel bad for the Blazers, man. I just feel like the last few years they're just running in place, They are compromised too much. And you know what, Sandeep, thank you so much for explaining the Ben Simmons trade, because at the end I was like, okay, it makes a little bit more sense now. But it's just like my only worry is like, don't you think they might be really compromised on the offensive end? Because the one player I do want to step up tremendously for the Blazers is Gary Trent Jr. Because for me, his name was on my radar in the bubble. Like the way he played, in the whole bubble play, even though Jason Tatum had a podcast saying that there were some guys playing better than usual because there's no fans and stuff like that. And I kind of agree.
Tweeting.
Yeah, he was subtweeting. And I think he was talking about Jamal Murray, but that's like another conversation. Gary Trent Jr. was one of those guys. He really stepped up to the plate, and he is a lethal shooter. So it's just like, okay, so put the ball in his hands more, see if he can create these type of CJ McCollum plays. And if he can, great. When CJ McCollum comes back, they can have another version of CJ in Gary Trent. But that's obviously he's gonna have to expand his game, and Terry Stotts is gonna have to put a lot more trust into him. If they're playing with a Knicks Carmelo or they had a Denver Carmelo, obviously I'd be saying Carmelo, but he's really just turned into a spot up shooter that can be consistent for a stretch, but then can be very inconsistent for a stretch. So I think that just circles back to my point that Damian Lillard's gonna have to score 60 plus or average 60 plus for like this next.
See, and like even if he was averaging like he's gonna have to take more shots, right? But it's easy for teams now, like playing against Portland, because it's like with TJ out, it's like, dude, just go double Dame and force someone else to beat you. Like it's like the same thing with the Warriors, like with Clay out. Like I'm just every game, if I'm an opposing coach, I'm like, go double Steph. Like I'll live with Kelly Oubre bricking threes. You know what I mean?
Kelly Oubre.
That makes sense.
But do you guys think like the Warriors seem to have figured it out in terms of like, because in the beginning the Warriors were looking horrible, that it looked like Steph was in scramble mode and he couldn't get the spacing. So obviously there's going to be so many adjustments, but do you guys think the Blazers can have that type of Warriors turnaround, or they're going to revolve again against like on their one superstar, but they're going to be able to create that space and figure things out with CJ and Nurkic out? Or do you guys think it's just going to go really downhill from here?
It's going downhill, man. Because the thing with the Warriors was like they had Steph and they were missing Draymond. Like now that since Draymond's been back, that's why they've gotten better, right? Because they have their best defensive player back, kind of like the guy who they like. Yes, Steph is the they run the offense through Steph, but like Draymond is kind of what makes that offense go, and then he's like their linebacker on defense, right? Portland is not getting a guy back right now. Like Nurkic is out for a couple months, McCollum is out for a month, so like guys will step up, like you have to, right? But they don't have someone like a Draymond type coming back that's just instantly gonna make them better.
Yeah, no, and I think that you're right. The Warriors have turned it around, and I don't know if they really have the firepower in Portland to really make that same turnaround though. Like that's just like my opinion. But if we want to look at things that I'm excited about, let's look immediately to the future. We have this great game that's about to start. Lakers, Bucks, both teams coming off losses. Lakers against the Warriors that we just like we said, and then the Bucks against the Nets. How these teams will respond to tough losses is always a fun thing for me because these are top teams that, they know how to win later in the year. But, look, during the regular season, there's always the doldrums, there's always boredom. They're just like, they don't want to be in the regular season. They just want to get to the
they're just cruising by.
When the playoffs start.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when the playoffs start. Bucks especially because the Lakers have already won a championship together. So now we have to see how the Bucks will respond to some mid-season kind of trepidation, especially with these losses that they're taking, even though they're pretty high up there on the East. So the Bucks, they're not defensively where they should be. They're 16th in the league in scoring defense, but they're second in terms of scoring offense. And I think that's a product of their pace, 16th, or it's sixth fastest in the league. So what do you think that the Bucks need to do to kind of get the edge in this game, especially against the Lakers team that's coming off a loss and probably wants to prove that they're still top dogs in the West? Sandeep, I'll let you go with this one since we both are Laker fans.
Man, that's the thing with the Bucks. Like that game, we talked about this last week too with the Bucks Nets game. That game it meant more to the Bucks, right? Because they're already kind of like the established team in the Eastern Conference, whereas the Nets had just put that Harden trade together, and so like it was kind of like it's just a regular season game. Like I know people say like, oh, just regular season, but there's always something to take away from these games. And I think that loss kind of like hurt the Bucks a little bit more. So today it's like they gotta come with it, right? Because like you said, they're playing the defending champion Lakers. They're coming off a loss, and so are the Lakers. So both these teams are going to be hungry, and this is a potential NBA Finals preview tonight, and they want to see how they're gonna fare against the top dogs in the NBA. Giannis is still under the shadow of LeBron. Like it's still LeBron and KD and Kawhi. When you think about like some of these top guys in the league and Steph up there too, of course. Giannis, he loves playing against LeBron, playing against these Lakers. Middleton has been really good, man, this year. I'm not a huge Middleton guy, but or I wasn't in the past, but I got to give him respect. Like he's playing really well. He's kind of been playing the closer role for them too. And part of that comes with him having a jump shot and Giannis not having a jump shot is like, that's a guy you want taking your shots, right? Because if you're guarding Giannis, you're just going to sag off. But I'm expecting this game to be close. It's probably going to be like a few possessions. I don't expect a blowout on either side because it's on national TV too. You're not going to see a blowout in this game.
Yeah, hey, and Ashmere agrees with you, man. Like if you see her in the comments, she's agreeing with the Lakers killing it tonight, and I kind of tend to agree. Henry, like when you look at Giannis and his place within this hierarchy of the NBA alpha dogs, like at the top, man, like do you think he'll ever make it to that level to be the best player in the league? Because as of right now, just like looking at the players above him or that we perceive to be above him, I'm not sure he breaks through.
No. And you know why? Because when you shoot 1 for 10 from the free throw line, especially in a close game, when that game against the Mavs and I saw the stat line that said 1 for 10 from the free throw line, I'm like, come on, man. Like you can't shoot 10% from the free throw line and expect your team. If you quantify these type of things, they're pretty bad. And if you're going to be the best player on the team, and if you're going to be regarded as one of the best players in the NBA, we're living in a time where you can't be a one-dimensional player. Like those times are behind us, big man.
He's a reigning 2-time MVP. How are you going to miss 9 free throws?
Exactly. See, and it's just right. Like these are the fundamentals that like for some reason, like it gets the better of the best players. That's why I want to see Giannis succeed, like his story is very inspiring for where he came from and everything, but it's just, you got to really put in the work in the gym. I mean, also if you're going to shoot threes, don't airball all the time. Like, he's
Yeah,
airballing-
just every now and then.
like, don't get me wrong. I love the confidence. Shoot your shot, but damn, at least hit the rim. Like, it goes far left, and it's just like, okay, Giannis, like, he's trying to expand his game. You know, he's trying to have like a type of Blake Griffin evolution, because Blake, he has 0 dunks so far this year. I just saw a stat line of that, and it's pretty sad to
seen
see
that,
that.
yeah.
You know, like,
That's that
like,
bad, yeah.
literally every single year's decrease. But you know, he's been able to compromise by being a 3-point shooter, by being a better free throw shooter, and by, you know, creating shots and not just relying on his athleticism. Giannis is gonna have to do that, and he's trying that, but he needs to succeed in order to excel in this league, in order to win a championship, because there's going to be AD, you know, like, he wasn't the best shooter coming into the league back in 2013, but he made himself into a shooter. I think you guys specifically remember that game winner against the Nuggets in the bubble. That came off an AD 3-pointer. So it's just like, okay, the momentum of this whole league is going to big men being they need to be reliable in 3-point line and extend their game. Giannis needs to do that. I have a lot of faith in him, but for him to be regarded as the best player, at least, you know, now, it's far from that.
See, I was slandering Giannis that night when he went 1 for 10, and then you know, someone who's a Bucks fan, like, that we follow each other on Twitter, like, she started giving me shit, being like, dude, have you seen LeBron's numbers? Like, or like, LeBron doesn't even close games all the time, like, they have AD too, and I'm like, and she pulled up the stats.
Oh.
Like, it was an old tweet. Like, she pulled up an old tweet of like LeBron's free throw numbers, like, in the clutch. And so she got me on that one, and I gave her the props, you know, because the numbers were there. Like, and I know LeBron's never been like a great free throw shooter, especially in the clutch. But like, LeBron's hit clutch shots. You know, he has like one of the highest clutch percentages, if not the highest clutch percentage at the end of games when it comes to like you know, jumpers or just field goals and within the final couple minutes. He's had a handful of buzzer beaters, and he's proven. You know, AD obviously too, but Giannis isn't there yet. Like, I remember him hitting that one game winner for sure at the Knicks at the or an MSG at the buzzer, and he's had like maybe like 1 or 2 other game winners like in the final moments. But we know him right now as like he's like a post guy, like, he's gonna dunk all over you, defensive monster. But it's the jumper, and like, dude, if he had a jumper, man, like, this guy's an average 35 a game easy,
yeah,
35
Oh
easy.
my God, yeah,
Like, it'd
sure.
be bad for the league, you know. And that's what's separating him from, like, that's why I still have him outside the top 5. Like, you know, I got my top 5 in no order is like LeBron, KD, Steph, Kawhi, and probably AD. You know, those are probably like my top 5 guys in the league right now.
No, it's a great list, and I mean, you really can't deny that. You know, in terms of the hierarchy, like, Giannis just isn't quite there yet, even though he has multiple MVPs, which is really sad.
Weird,
But I mean, yeah, it's just really weird, and I don't like talking shit about Giannis, but you know,
He's a great player, yeah.
Yeah,
He's a great player.
Like, I'll admit,
But-
he's a generational player, but it's just like, if we're talking about the now, then I think there's been so many holes exposed in his game that he's trying to prove everybody wrong, but it just hasn't been going right, you know?
Yeah, and something has to give there, but you know that we have so much show to get through, but we just ran out of time, dude. So like, that's it. This episode of Screen the Key is over. Thank you for listening. Be sure to catch us next Thursday